bring and hang up because it's too many clothes. I went in the shelter with 2 bags and came out with 3 totes. No, 10 totes of stuff. So be careful if you do go in the shelter. Don't collect too much. Hi, Donnies. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. So just so you know, this is a story time channel because trying to put it in a book, it's just not working. So I'm going to tell my story so you don't have to. So in this story, it's not necessarily a story, but in some previous stories, I told you I was in a shelter. So the next few stories I have to find another word for stories. It's going to be redundant. But the next few videos will be talking about my time in the shelter, why I was in the shelter. I'm going to do a live regarding why I was in the shelter. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about this beautiful shelter I was in. Now, if you're ever homeless, this is the type of shelter you want to go in. Not that I want anybody to ever be homeless, except for, those people that like being homeless. Amen to you. But for those who were trying to get back on their feet or dealing with a disability case and you need somewhere to stay because you don't have any money, sometimes going into a shelter is better. Or if you're dealing with entities that aren't very kind to you, which we'll talk about that later. Today is a positive video about the shelter I was in. So, the shelter I was in, I really don't know how many acres it was, but once upon a time it was a warehouse, and then they bought the land and turned it to a shelter. And I tried to ask the powers that be, how big is the place, but they didn't know. Well, let me say the people under the powers that be didn't know. Anyhow, so the first shelter I went to, because they had I want to say 6 or 5 shelters within the shelter. I think it was, how many? Let me count. I'm looking at my notes. So, about 5 to 8, I think. So, the first one I was in, it was placed in the campus, but it wasn't necessarily part of the bigger one, but they rented out a unit. And that one happened to be like a recuperative shelter. It was like a medical shelter where if you just had some type of medical procedure, you could stay there. Dropping stuff. You can stay there and recuperate, where you know how most shelters you have to leave in the middle of the day to go look for a job or what have you. You couldn't stay in your room. But this particular shelter, technically you could stay in your room and where you can recuperate. However, in the morning time, we would have, I say encouragement time, where we would pray. We would talk about things that happened the night before, try to resolve some issues, because there were some issues. I mean, a group of women all together, there's going to be issues. And then they would bring, in the middle of the day, people would come in to bring some other kind of encouraging things like, doing vision boards or telling you about resources that you may not know of, just things to help you get back on your feet. Like I said, it was supposed to be a 30-day stay, but I was able to stay for 4 months, which was beautiful. I messed up and told them that my physical therapy had ended, and I think that's why I had to go. Sometimes I'm just too honest. Okay, so that was that shelter. There was something else I was going to say about that shelter. If I remember, I'll just put it in the editing notes later. I'm still in contact with 2 ladies that worked there. They were beautiful ladies. One had a heart sincere, but when I had to leave, she cried. So I know better. She's a softie at heart. So I had to leave because my time was up. And I ended up going to a shelter in another county where there was 12 people to a room. Oh, I forgot to say, in the medical shelter, I had my own room and it was pretty spacious. I didn't take a picture of that one, but it was pretty spacious. I loved it. There was like 2 rows of rooms. And so at first I was in a smaller room, but then an incident happened and I asked if I could move to another room since that person moved out. So I was able to move into the Diva row. So we had bigger rooms and it was spacious and it was beautiful. And I just loved it. Okay. So now moving on to the other shelter where I was in a different county, there was 12 in a room. We had bunk beds. I was blessed to be able to get in that room where I could be on a lower bunk bed, seeing how I'm disabled and nobody's trying to climb bunk beds. So I was able to stay there for 2 weeks. I had a caseworker. Somehow, see, I thought I had my notes together, but I forgot about something. So, I'll just say this so it'll transition better. So the shelter that was in the other county with the 12 rooms, I had a caseworker, and somehow she knew how to get in the system to get me back to that other shelter where I told you the campus was bigger. I don't know why the medical shelter didn't know the process, because it was right across the driveway. I was like, I just want to go right there to the driveway. So I had to keep calling and like, is there any room? Is there any room? And the medical shelter was like, don't say that you were in the medical shelter. I don't know if there was like some beef. I don't know. I don't understand. I'm sure things are better now because they have a ramp now. They didn't have a ramp when I was in the shelter and I had to climb up some stairs, but that's neither here or there. So I was able to get into the bigger shelter. Now, this bigger shelter, like I said, had a lot of shelters within the shelter. I don't know the number, but I'm sure after I read these notes, we'll know the number. So you have your shelter for single women, which they were remodeling. So I was in the shelter with the women and children, which wasn't bad because those rooms were beautiful. They were beautiful. I'll post some pictures. It might look like a prison in the pictures, but we were able to decorate it the way we needed to. And just so you know, most of my videos from 2020 were filmed in the shelter. So that's how good it was. So there was 3 to a room. The rooms were spacious. They did have a plaque on one of the hallway walls stating that it was more like hotel living. To me, it was more like living in the dorms because you're dealing with different people with different entities. You know, some people were cool and some people were. But it's a shelter. I had a place to stay. I wasn't outside in the cold or the rain or the heat. So that was fine. One thing about this particular shelter is a 6-month stay. And you have the ability to stay longer depending on your case. So that was beautiful. You did have to leave in the middle of the day. And but I would just go into the computer lab because I'm not trying to travel anywhere. Plus, I was waiting to have my disability hearing. This was during the time of the pandemic. So we were shut in. Now, I wasn't mad about being shut in because that meant I didn't have to go anywhere in the middle of the day and I could just stay in my room, which was great because during this time, a lot of people left. I don't know why they left because it's like, where you going to go during the pandemic? And I was like, well, I'm not out on the streets, so I'm not mad about the situation. I will stay in my room and be as peaceful as I want to be. Also, with my back pain, that meant I had more time to lay down instead of having to sit up. If you like listening to funny, sad, ridiculous stories, please subscribe. Mom would say it's like a bad sitcom. So you have the women and children, the singles. Then there were some hidden shelters within the shelter. I don't even know where those women were, but they were tucked away. They were tucked away somewhere. And those women, it was for women coming out of sex trafficking, women dealing with any kind of addiction coming out of that, and then domestic violence. So they were tucked away where, you wouldn't know where they were. And that's the reason why I'm not naming the name of the shelter. I mean, I'm sure some people will get a gist of what shelter I'm talking about, but I don't want to give too much information. I just want to talk about my experience. And like I said, if anybody has to go to shelter, I hope they will end up in this type of shelter. They had a couple of churches on the campus. They had your traditional church, which I would go there. And then they had the hip hop church. After watching G. Craig Lewis, they might want to change that name, but you would have to watch The Truth Behind Hip Hop to know why it shouldn't be a hip hop church. But the funny thing is, I couldn't stand the music. And I'm like, what happened? That's when I knew I had become old, because your girl used to choreograph hip hop, Christian hip hop routines. And I realized I was old when I was like, oh, I can't take this. I can't take this music. Oh, I can't take it. It's hilarious. If you knew who I was before, it makes no sense. I'll post the video of one of the routines I had choreographed so you can get my drift. We had Bible studies on Saturday. Now, Bible studies were great because you always want to keep the word in your heart, especially when you're dealing with your own stress, the stress in the shelter, the rules of the shelter. They had strict rules, but hey, I mean, their house, their rules, but it was better than where I was before. That's all I'm going to say. Well, like I said, we'll do a live, the reason why I was in the shelter. So with the Bible study, we had regular Bible study, but then every other week we play bingo. And with bingo, everybody plays their first round where it's just regular bingo. And you can win prizes like things you may need in the shelter, like earphones or headphones or lotion and toiletries. And, he would ask us what are things we need. So there was a bevy of things that we needed, and they would have it there to win prizes. There was also time to win jewelry. So yeah, I got this from the shelter. I think I got this shirt, yeah, and my pants. Oh, and my watch. Let me see if I can show you. I got my watch from the shelter. It's a Seiko. It's beautiful. The only thing I had to do was get a battery. So, people tell me I look like $1 million, and they have no idea I got it from the shelter, because a lot of people donated things to the shelter. I have some items that, we just like plugging names. Not just supposed to celebrate a celebrity, but Shaka Khan's granddaughter had donated some clothes, so that was great. So they were of good quality. I have a few items. I don't have it here, but I mean, I don't have it on, nor did I remember to bring and hang up because it's too many clothes. I went in the shelter with 2 bags and came out with 3 totes. No, 10 totes of stuff. So be careful if you do go in the shelter. Don't collect too much. Okay. So, and then the second round of bingo was a blackout bingo. And with blackout bingo, you had to cover your whole board. If you were able to cover your whole board in time, you had the opportunity there was a chance of getting $10 Walmart gift cards. So you had 5 chances. There was 5 chances of getting Walmart gift cards. The other thing I forgot to mention about the bingo, there was one Christmas where a church from up north had donated some purses, and the purses had toiletries bigger toiletries than what we normally get. And there was this one purse I was examining the shape and the size of it because for some reason people say I'm a bag lady because I carry a lot of stuff. So I was analyzing the shape of this one particular purse that I wanted to win for the regular bingo. so I can put my laptop and all my belongings in it, and I won't look like a quote unquote bag lady. Quote unquote bag lady. And it wasn't until the end of last year that I even knew it was a high-end purse. I was grocery shopping one day and this lady came up to me and she's like, "Oh, you have a shopper bag." And I'm like, what is she talking about? And she's like, "Your Dooney." I did not know I had won a Dooney and Burke, but here's a picture of it. Okay, so also on this shelter, they had a medical clinic, which was great for someone like me dealing with disability. And like I said, I was waiting on my hearing. By this time, I did get a lawyer, and my lawyer's like, "Don't move around." Ergo, why I had to stay in the state I was in. So they had preventative care, women's health, mental health, individual or group, which I took that opportunity. At the clinic, they had mental health, and in the shelter, somebody would come, an intern would come and have mental health sessions. Which I liked the intern one because it was an hour, and she actually helped me walk through some things. The medical clinic one was 30 minutes, and it was like by the time I got to the point, it was like it was over, but it was still good. She gave me some tools to help me work out some things. I was able to get eyeglasses. I got my teeth worked on. And yeah, that was all the medical stuff there. They also had wonderful job training. I believe they had culinary classes. They had customer service classes. Hey, hospitality/customer service. Security classes, exterminating classes, and computer coding classes. I wanted to take the computer and coding classes, but my lawyer was like, "No, you can't do anything until after your disability." The thing with disability is like you have to be totally not working, right? Then you get your disability, then you can sign up to work. You know how the government is. So, now, we did have 3 square meals a day. And then at 7 p.m. we had snack time. We also had chores. I mean, I was like, well, this kind of like, the chores to me was like paying off being in the shelter. You know, unfortunately, breakfast wasn't that good until later on. Lunch, it was okay because they also had a lot of staff there in the daytime, so I guess they let them have better food than feeding slop. So lunch was pretty good. Dinner was real good most of the time because there was one person there that she would put her foot in the food and make sure everybody had food. So that was great. I did meet some wonderful friends there that I still keep in touch with till this day. I failed to mention also for the women and children, there was a preschool for any kids that were, I think, between the age. Actually, there was a preschool on campus, elementary school on campus, and I believe a junior high school on campus. I totally forgot about that. So there was schooling for all age kids on the campus. So that is my experience with this particular shelter. I will tell you more about what transpired, like transitioning out of the shelter in another video. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of my experience being in a shelter. I ask you to please watch the other content on my channel. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell. Please like and share, and I'll see you next time. Bye.